Well, it's great to be with you today. Last time we finished up chapter 3. Today we're just going to do a little bit of reviewing and then get into our next unit. So let's get organized first. For materials, you need to have on hand activity from pages 25 and 26. It doesn't have a number, but it is entitled A Second Look, The World as God Made It. And of course, you'll need to be sure that test 3 is available nearby for you. On our agenda today, several things. We're going to review chapter 3, also review the unit as test 3 is cumulative. Then we'll have a time for your parents called Parent Preview. And then we're going to do our own Unit 2 and Chapter 4 preview after that. So you can see that we have several things to get accomplished, and in order to get everything done in time, I'm going to try to spend only about 5 minutes on each item on our agenda, so we'll get started into our busy day. First of all, let's open class with our chapter verse, Genesis 8:22. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Now we're going to start out by reviewing chapter 3. We're going to go over as many terms as we can in 5 minutes, and you should be able to quickly come up with the term to match the definition. A phenomenon that occurs when waters in the Pacific warm up, moving east to the coast of Chile and then north, changing the weather patterns. Okay, El Nino, you can probably get the answer while I'm reading the definition. Grasslands in temperate regions. Okay, in temperate regions we have steppe. The amount of water vapor in the air is referred to as humidity. Humidity. The process of liquid changing into water vapor. That is evaporation. Evaporation. An air mass with relatively hot, rising air. Low pressure. That is a low pressure system. The process of water vapor changing into liquid. Condensation. Condensation. A tree that loses its leaves during a particular season of the year. Those are known as deciduous trees. Deciduous. The line where two air masses collide is a front. A front. Plants that grow in a region. Rather general, but that is a general term. Vegetation. Vegetation. A tree that produces its seed as a cone. A conifer. Conifer. Soil that remains frozen all year long. Permafrost. Slow-moving water that has seeped under the soil. Groundwater. The circular flow of an ocean current. A gyre. An air mass with relatively cold sinking air. That should be easy after the other one. That will be a high pressure system, high pressure. The common northeasterly winds of the tropics. Those are the trade winds. Large region where distinct populations of plants and animals are found living together. That is a biome. A biome. Because molecules are thinner at higher elevation, temperatures drop 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit for every 1,000 feet one climbs in altitude. What do we call this? It is the lapse rate. Lapse rate. Okay, we've got about another minute. The point at which water begins condensation. That is the dew point. Dew point. A large area of air that has a similar temperature and moves together. That's an air mass. A dry region that cannot support trees but has plenteous grasses. Grassland. The rise of warm air over a hot surface. And that is convection. Convection. Okay, we'll stop there. 5 minutes is about up. And if you had trouble with any of these terms, you'll want to spend some more time in review and study before moving on to the test, which is going to come up in the lesson in a few minutes, but you can always stop and review some more. Now we're going to take about another 5 minutes to look over the unit review, and we do want to do this before the test because it is a cumulative test. And what we're going to do is that with this activity, we're actually going to start at the back. I liked what was on the back more since we probably won't have time to cover it all together. So we're going to start with the back. We're going to start with this bottom section. Then we'll move up to this next section. We'll move to the front bottom section, and then we'll go as far as we can, working from the back to the front. So on the back, give the term that fits each description. Number 35, the effect of the Earth's rotation on wind direction, making wind appear to veer away from its true direction. All right, we talked about that one a great deal. That is the Coriolis effect. Number 36, the prevailing winds in the middle latitudes. The middle latitudes are going to be the westerlies. The westerlies. 37, the fall of water to the earth in any form. Precipitation. Number 38, precipitation that occurs as humid air mass moves over mountains. A humid air mass moves over mountains. That is our orographic precipitation. Number 39, grasslands in tropical regions that offer open areas with scattered trees. And that is our savanna. Savanna. One more in this section, cold regions near the poles that support only limited vegetation. Tundra. Tundra. Okay, now we're going to move up to numbers 31, let's see, yes, 31 to 34. That is the map. So you want to fill in on the map the equator, the tropics, or label the equator, the tropics, the temperate zones, and the polar regions. Okay. You might need to pause the program if you're still writing. The equator is the line there at the center. Our tropics are the orange band near the equator. The temperate zones are the green bands between the tropics and our polar regions, which are at the poles, the blue zones at the poles. All right, also on your worksheet, there are mentioned the middle latitudes and the degrees. You want to be sure to be familiar with those as well for the test. Now we're going to go on to the section on the front of the page where you underline. Underline the word or phrase that best completes each sentence. Number 21. The two main branches of geography are human and physical or systematic. Physical. Remember, systematic is a way to study geography. Number 22. The most common world map projection found in your textbook is Robinson's or Good's? Robinson's. Number 23. Evolutionists believe most of the Earth's features were changed as a result of a cataclysm or uniformitarianism. Uniformitarianism. The air above the Earth's surface is called the hydrosphere or the atmosphere. It is the atmosphere. Remember, hydro means water. 25. The largest land mass is North America or Eurasia? Eurasia. 26. The largest ocean in the world is the Atlantic or Pacific? Pacific. 27. Mount Aconcagua or Mount Everest is the highest mountain on the earth? Mount Everest, thankfully. That way I don't have to say the other one again. 28. The longest river in the world is the Nile or the Amazon? The Nile. 29. The largest lake in the world is Lake Superior or the Caspian Sea? The Caspian Sea. Number 30. Weathering or erosion washes away soil to form barrier islands? It is erosion. Weathering breaks down the rocks into the particles of soil, and erosion sweeps those particles away. Okay, we're going to stop there, and that's going to be all we have time to complete together. But you do want to go ahead. There is a section where you're finding out where something is located and listing the four main phases of the Earth's history, listing the continents and the oceans. You want to be sure to pause either now, do that and have that graded, or whenever you pause for your test, go ahead and do that as your last little review, have that checked before you go on. All right? Now, I do want to address the test briefly with you. It is pretty much like the other tests that you've looked at before, but it does have one extra page, additional page, which is the cumulative test, and I do want to look briefly at that. And of course, I want to point out you do have an essay question, which is not optional. Mark that off. What causes seasonal changes? Do all areas of the world have the same seasons? Why or why not? You should be able to answer that. We've talked about that a great deal. And describe the Coriolis effect. Now, don't feel like you have to explain everything. They've only left you a few lines, but describe what happens. What is the effect? Your cumulative review is very brief. It's not optional, so make sure that you cross that off. 57, 58, and 59 are multiple choice. Then you have 60 through 68 as short answer. And that's it. That's all there is to the cumulative review. So it should be very easy for you if you have studied well and reviewed. So at this point, you need to stop the program to complete the review and, more importantly, to take your test. Okay, now be sure to have the test graded before you continue with the program. Okay, I want to look briefly just at the true-false. Most of the answers are pretty clear, and there's a page number there. All you need to do is look it up to see what you've missed. But true-false, sometimes folks have a little question on that. I'm just going to talk about the statements that were false and tell you what about the statement was false. 36, every part of the world has 4 seasons is false because the tropics, and the polar regions have only 2 seasons. The tropics have the wet and dry, and the polar regions have the 2 seasons of complete light and complete darkness. Number 40 was false. It stated that cool air rises and warm air falls. It's the opposite. Warm air rises and cool air sinks. 41 was also false. The most powerful winds are the westerlies. The most powerful winds are the trade winds of the tropics. Think of them along the equator getting hot. They're going to get warmer than any other air, and so they're going to have more speed. They're going to be the most powerful winds. 42 was also false. An air mass has an air mass is air with similar temperatures, not varying temperatures. Number 43 was also false. Steppes are not a type of wasteland, they are prairie lands. They're a type of grassland. Okay, then essay questions. 55, what causes seasonal changes? We talked a great deal about this. The basic change of the Earth's seasons is caused by what? The tilt of the Earth on its axis, which allows the direct rays of the sun to fall on areas other than the equator. Remember, if the Earth is straight, the sun would always hit right at the equator. Because it's tilted, as it moves around, the direct sun rays can hit as far north as 23.5 degrees and as far south as 23.5 degrees at the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. Now, the latitude of an area then determines the number of seasons it has. At the poles, just 2 seasons. The temperate zones here have 4 seasons, and then at the poles, they also have just 2 seasons. Okay, number 56, describe the Coriolis effect. Basically, it's because the Earth is rotating, it jerks us out from under the wind, which causes the wind to seem to veer. Remember that winds heading towards the equator veer west, winds heading away from the equator appear to veer to the east. That's all there was to it. I hope you didn't have too much struggle with that one. Sometimes we try to explain more thoroughly than we really need to and get ourselves a little confused. Now, it's time for me to meet with your parents, so you want to be sure to let them know at this point. You're going to just pause the program for them and allow them to view the parent preview. Well, we've just completed Unit 1, The World as God Made It, which covered maps, the Earth's surface, and climate. And whereas Unit 1 surveyed concepts from Earth science, Unit 2 focuses on economics, culture, and government. Now, depending on your student's background, you might want to adjust the pace a little bit, more rapid if this material is review for your student, and of course you might want to slow down and review a little bit longer if this is the first time your student has been introduced to these types of concepts. Now, Unit 2 is The World as Man Subdues It. And like Unit 1, it offers foundational ideas that will be referred to throughout the rest of the text. So it is important for your student to master the concepts as much as possible. Details then from specific examples are going to be filled in as we study each world region in the later units. So this is kind of building a framework, and then we'll fill in the muscle, the meat, as we go throughout the rest of the textbook. This unit also contains chapters 4 and 5, which are on industry and society. And these chapters consider human geography, or the study of man as he lives on the earth and uses the resource that God has given him, whereas previously we covered physical geography, talking mostly about earth science concepts. Now, for the chapter on industry, our main concept is an important ingredient in understanding human geography is the study of industry, primary, secondary, and tertiary, and national economics. Now, in case it's been a while since you've studied industry, here's just a little refresher for you. Primary industries are the most basic, such as agriculture, fishing, farming, mining. Secondary industries take the raw materials and change them into a useful form and include industries such as construction and manufacturing. Tertiary industries are those jobs in which the workers provide some service rather than goods. We'll also be studying the 2 basic economic systems, capitalism and socialism. Then we'll move on into chapter 5, which is on society. And it's the most pivotal chapter in the book because it actually summarizes the first 4 chapters and expands them to give a complete overview of systematic geography, which is what we've been studying in the first unit and this unit as well. The rest of our book, we're going to be doing regional geography, where we're going around to all the different countries. And chapter 5 emphasizes the importance of society and its spiritual needs, and it also introduces the rest of the book, which is on regional geography. Our main concept in our society chapter is that the world is divided into 8 culture regions that have various demographic and political characteristics. And the culture regions defined by our textbook are Northern America, Latin America, Western Europe, Central Eurasia, the Middle East, Asia, Africa, and Oceania. So that's how our textbook has divided the regions. And in addition to culture, we're going to be studying types of government and learning about statistics. So it might be helpful to have a World Almanac on hand for this unit, as your student will be learning terms to help him interpret these different statistics. Also, your student will continue his work on the semester project, Geography Ireland. Now I'll go ahead and continue with the lesson. All right, now that your parents have had the preview for this unit, let's take a moment to do our own preview of Unit 2 together. The title is The World as Man Subdues It. And as I mentioned at the end of our last lesson, this unit is going to allow us to focus on man and his use of the resources that God has given him. And we're going to look back to page 1 in your textbook here. Remember our map, this is from Unit 1, and you can see the chapter headings over at the left. Finding our place in the world, our surface, climate. So basically this was physical geography, and we were studying earth science concepts. However, turn in your book now to pages 58 and 59 and you'll see a completely different type of map. That's because we're moving on to a different type of study. The World as Man Subdues It includes chapter 4 on industry and chapter 5 on society. This is actually going to the area of human geography rather than physical geography. So you want to notice the difference in the maps, and that'll just kind of give you an idea of our shifting in gears in this new unit. And our chapters that we're looking at are going to focus on people, their economy, their culture, and their government. So we're going to go ahead and get into chapter 4 right now. Chapter 4 is on industry, and here is our main idea. An important ingredient in understanding human geography is the study of industry and national economics. And we do have several goals. Let's just quickly look at the chapter goals. After this chapter, you should be able to distinguish the 3 levels of industry, identify the major minerals mined today and explain their importance, identify 3 revolutionary periods in the development of industry, define infrastructure and identify 3 types, distinguish capitalism and socialism, define GDP and calculate per capita GDP, distinguish a developed and a developing country, and identify the main purpose of trade and the causes of trade disputes. So we have a lot cut out for us in this chapter. Now, God has given man the responsibility to use the earth wisely, which is reflected in our chapter verse for chapter 4. Genesis 1, 27 and 28. Go ahead and read along with me. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful, and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. In this chapter, we're going to see how man is handling his assignment from God to subdue the earth. And speaking of assignments, Well, of course, by this point you have finished your second look activity and your test. However, you should be continuing to work on your Geography Island project. This chapter you'll be working on mineral resources map and a land use map. And I have a few samples here with me. So let me just get to those. You'll be adding these in. It's kind of hard when you're first starting a chapter to really know what you're looking for, but just to get a little preview I think will help you. And this is an example of a mineral resources map. It is done in pencil, so it's a little pale, but I'm going to get a little closer so that you can see some of the details that are written here. Here is limestone deposit. Over here on this edge we have the key, emerald, marble, olivine mine, pearl bed, and so on. Okay, also, this student went a little above and beyond and put in a little cross section of a salt dome from a section of her map. Okay, and she has her mineral resources scattered in the appropriate areas on her island. Another map that you might add to, that you'll be adding, is a product map, and I'm just going to go ahead and start really close to this one and be adding this to your Geography Island project. Agriculture, and she's got a lot of things on here. You wouldn't have to have necessarily this many, but wheat, potatoes, and corn, so on. Pigs, beef, dairy, poultry, fish. Also, industry is included on this map. Now, I don't believe that that was on your list for your Geography Island project. You might want to check carefully and see, but that could be an extra credit section if you want to include industry there, unless it's specified in your on your land use map. You might even want to make a separate map for industry. Since we're doing a whole chapter on it, you might want to have that separately. But she has precious gems, limestone, marble, radioactive energy, fuels, clay. You might want to be more specific once you learn about some of the topics we're talking about in our chapter. Then she also has power plant, food preserving plant, gem and mineral quarries, lumber industry, and just all over the map we can see the different symbols of what products are being created or mined, used here on Shirby Island. And then we'll just take a look at the whole thing so you can see. Yes, it's scattered all over the map. Okay, so she's done a very good job, very particular. And of course you want to take into consideration the topography of your island. For example, mining might be done depending on the item that's being mined in the mountains, wherever you have your mountains on your island, and so on. She had, one example of hers was a pearl bed. Of course that's going to be near the shore, offshore. So those are things to take into consideration. Maybe just kick around some ideas as we are looking at our industry chapter during this unit. Now, so for your assignment, I'm going to make it easy on you. All you have to do is continue working on your Geography Island. Again, it's probably too early to start on to these, but this is showing you what to look for during this chapter. And if you haven't finished the previous maps already, you need to really get going on those. Now, let's see if you found the answer to our question from last time. Where in the world? Where can you find the world's only freshwater sharks? Lake Nicaragua. And since you have just recently taken a test, I'm going to give you a little break, and there's no new question for today. I'll see you next time.